really got to try on that left-hand side. What happened?
Oh, but I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit of meat this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth, your podcast for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more, all about the world of rugby. This is actually your 200th weekly episode, mostly weekly. We missed one, maybe two in closing in on 4 years. We're getting there. As always, my name is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it all over the globe. We are part of the Sports Social Network. You can find us wherever you typically get your content, whether YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other major platform. So there was some amazing rugby on offer this weekend. Why don't we get this thing on the road? Okay, starting as always with current updates. We've been posting about it, but I wanted to be sure to mention it here again. So next month in July, I will be taking a course taught by the incredible Dallen Stanford all about doing comms for rugby. It looks incredible. You know, who knows what it might lead to. I'm just incredibly excited. I believe there may be a couple slots available in the early July cohort if you'd care to join me, but there are other cohorts coming your way as well. If you're curious at all, the link is in the show notes to fill out the form and let him know about your interest. I'm hoping to actually see the man himself on Saturday at Fort Quincy, where he'll be doing comms for my beloved Free Jacks. It all looks really good. Anyway, getting to our reviews, you know, it was weird looking at the schedule on my streaming service this weekend because there was so little action. Why is that? Because it's playoff time and the big competitions we cover here are wrapping up. It was the final weekend in the URC. It was the final weekend in the Prem. Only one more week of Super Rugby after this one. 2 of the top 14, 2 of the MLR. And then there's the WER Legacy Cup the day after the MLR final. How am I not currently reduced to tears over all this great action going away? 3 words. NPC. Oh, also, yeah, there might be some of that Lion stuff coming on as well. Anyway, kicking things off, it was the URC final featuring the sacred cash cow that is Leinster facing off against the enigmatic Bulls in Dublin. I'll be honest, I was the opposite of fired up for this one. I've enjoyed the URC so much this season, and it's just a bummer to end on, you know, a bit of a predictable note. It was a wet and windy day at Croke Park. I don't know if you saw the step dancing performance ahead of the match, but I recommend checking it out, if only for the drummer who was chewing gum with perhaps the most sardonic face I've ever seen. This was the first time a URC final was held outside of South Africa, and the weather and atmosphere seemed to sort of draw a distinct line under that fact. Auckland native Jamison Gibson Park, he was ruled out just prior to the game, not sure why, but I wondered how much of a difference that would make. You know, he's really been the engine for this team's attack all season. Of course, as soon as Jack Conan got over for the first try, just 6 minutes in, I wondered if I had put maybe a little too much stock in that particular theory. It was 19-0 at halftime. I confess, didn't really pay much attention after that. You know, regular listeners will know one-sided games are my least favorite, and a one-sided game featuring a team I most dislike is a double whammy of meh for me. The Bulls, they managed 1 try in the second half, but that was it. A humdrum and disheartening way for such a great season to conclude. Leinster have officially won their first URC title, and the Bulls will need to do some reflecting on their performance this weekend. It was massively underwhelming. It was a bad showing from them, I'll be honest. And 32-7 was your final score. After that, hopping over to England, it was the grand final for the Gallagher Premiership with favourites Bath nominally hosting Leicester at Allianz London. What a day. The skies were profound, cerulean blue. Julian Montoya came out carrying what I presume was his beautiful little daughter. It was just all magnificent. Of course, that's when I realized they'd lined up the putrescent comms of Austin Healey to contend with all day. I'm not stupid. The guy's obviously an expert. He understands the game at levels I never will, but he's such like a repugnant dolt. He just seems to hate the sport that we're all watching and never fails to do his best to spoil it, quite frankly. I just don't get why he keeps getting these high-profile matches. My inherent dislike of all things English rugby is often augmented by their sort of tone-deaf employment of the likes of Austin Healey and Andy Good as well. Just makes it so easy for the casual fan to hate this competition. I feel like they should be making efforts in the opposite direction. Anyway, Finn Russell had clearly finished cutting his own hair like 14 hours before kickoff, and Beno Obano was in top form, though got a red card in this very fixture. You might remember last season. He'd be hoping to stay on the field a bit longer and at more strategic times this year. Bath, they look very excited for this one to begin. The Tigers looked a bit tense. A side note aimed at the Rugby Network, every single streaming service, from YouTube to the most pricey, have accepted the fact that spacebar is play and pause. Play, pause. That's what the spacebar is for. Like, the fact that you haven't figured that out and you're the only place on earth that hasn't figured it out. Come on, let's get it together, people. Anyway, the Tigers got an exuberant try to crack the scoreboard, and Finn, quote, took the sting out of it, unquote, as the comm said, slotting 3 soon after that. It was a really fun game to watch in the brilliant sunshine, a rarity this weekend. It was lovely. Bath, however, were looking pretty slow with only 25 minutes gone. They were, as the comm said, walking around out there, and it was true. They lost a couple of opportunities where players were left isolated because nobody cared to show up on defense or in support, I should say. 13-7 was your halftime score as Michael Cheika came down to rage against the dying of the light, provoking open amusement on the faces of whoever those rich people were that he was talking to. Andre Pollard, he of the uncluttered mind, but also he of the 2 for 5 performance last week off the boot. Muffed a kick you'd think he would have found easy. I'm a huge fan of the guy, but I wondered if he cost his team a title this year, maybe. Almost as soon as I wrote that down, Finn intercepted a pass that led to another Bath try. Andre, just not the player he's been all year and all career, to be fair. Quick shout out, Ben Youngs, making his final appearance in professional rugby, read the on-screen stat at least, and even I can appreciate the solid career this man's had. I would want him on any team I coached, no matter where or when. So anyway, as the final quarter got underway, it looked dire for the Tigers, but on a sunny day in southwest London, hope was alive. 23-21, the nail-biting score with 2.5 minutes to go. As Finn kicked it into touch, the comms shouted, quote, 29 years of pain have been washed away, unquote. And I was eminently pleased to find the team I vaguely supported for the last couple of years found their way to a massive victory. Finn Russell, maybe the most influential player in World Rugby, though Artie Savia's ears may have just pricked up when I said that. Holy cow, what a game. So good. Switching gears and heading down to the Southern Hemisphere for Super Rugby Pacific. We started off with Crusaders versus Blues. Before the match got started, they gave us a head-to-head comparison of the seasons that Scott Barrett and Patrick Tuipulotu have had. Their numbers were shockingly similar, with Barrett getting 15 fewer carry meters with 1 fewer game. The standout stat for me, though, was Barrett getting 5 line-out steals compared with Tuipulotu's 2. 5 seems like a crazy number in 13 games. It was wool hat weather in Christchurch as the strains of fanfare for the common man resonated throughout the stadium. So much history between these teams. The Crusaders were clear favorites. I was hoping for a vintage Blues performance circa this time last year. History was not on their side, however, with only 4 wins over their 24 meetings here. Really exciting contest. The Blues scoring 2 tries, then the Crusaders doing the exact same thing. We were locked at 14 until about the 70-minute mark when the home side got over for a go-ahead backbreaker of a score. The visitors had one final shot. They were driving with the clock well into the red, but they got turned over. That was that. 21-14. No repeat championship for the Blues this year. And the dreaded Crusaders, they're back in another final. And again, as the number 1 seed, woe be to the winner of the next match. So, speaking of the next match, it was the Chiefs hosting the remaining Australian team, the Brumbies. For me, it's still hard to get over the Chiefs losing last weekend in the playoffs and still having home field advantage this week in the second round of the playoffs. But there it is. I'm sure they'll find a way to make it even zanier next season. The Chiefs, of course, defeated the Brumbies in their 2023 semifinal. The conditions at the FMG were, as the comms like to say, greasy. Mini side note, the opening montage was possibly the best I've ever seen. Just a masterclass in hype, and it worked. I was pretty worked up. Noah Lolesio, he came into the match with 589 points for the Brumbies, putting him 3rd all time, but this was potentially his last game for the club, having signed to play in the Japanese Rugby League 1 next season. I've always liked Lolesio. I feel like the spectral lich that is Eddie Jones, it just really did some permanent harm. Like, here's hoping a stint in Japan will be restorative to his rugby soul. He's got a ton of talent, but was treated very shabbily as a wallaby. Scoreless, just 8 minutes in, Tupuvai copped a yellow card. Would the visitors be able to pounce? They had a line out inside the Chiefs' 22 and had enjoyed the most success in that situation out of all teams this year, getting 35 tries out of it, a truly impressive number. Just before the half-hour mark, the Brumbies got on the board with a powerhouse try, but they found themselves behind 16-12 as the waning moments of the first half counted down. DMAC added another 3 before the Hooter, much to the chagrin of the Brumbies, who, felt like they were being robbed at the scrum, but the officials were unmoved by their protestations. The visiting team would get as close as 2 points, but then, the wheels. I wrote down kinda came off. It was not kinda. There was no kinda about it. The wheels majorly came off. It wasn't a fun one to watch. With a quarter hour to go, it was 37-17. It's easy to see the way that the game was going to be ending. And that was, in fact, your final score. A bit of a bummer of a day for the remaining Aussie team. That does set us up for one final showdown. The Crusaders, who grabbed the top spot from the Chiefs last weekend, will host the final in Christchurch. And I think I can feel which way that wind is blowing. Meanwhile, up in France in the top 14, it was the preliminary round of the playoffs where the 3rd through 6th ranked teams play to earn the right to face either Toulouse? I think. Yes. Yeah, Toulouse, of course. Or my Border Beagles, UBB, next weekend. That meant on Friday, by the way, a top 14 game on a Friday night? What happened? So on Friday, we had Bayonne versus Clermont. If you thought it was raining in Ireland, it had nothing on the thick, gobby droplets cascading down on a packed house where they said upwards of 1,500 Clermont fans had actually descended as well. Lest we forget, Bayonne were a Pro D2 team just 4 years ago. Their presence in the playoffs really spoke to the hopes and ambitions of that second tier. Staying up in the top 14 is a monumental task, and the fact that they were now hosting a postseason match is the stuff of dreams. In the biblical conditions, tries were elusive. We had a kicking duel in our hands as we approached the break. It was 9-3, and the crowd was undaunted by the conditions. What great support this team has. Really, really cool. Clermont, though, they had no more in the second stanza. It was a thorough victory for the home team, who will have a much larger hill to climb next weekend. Bayonne in the swirling baby blue confetti, winners for the first time at this level, 20-3. Incredible stuff. Then on Saturday, of course, it was Toulon at home for Cast. The atmosphere was volcanic, as you would imagine. I still think this competition has too many rounds. 28 games seems punitive to me, but I have to admit, when we're down to these final strokes, like it just feels all the more delicious. Baptiste, he is so good. I was watching him, and I was struggling to remember his name until he got utterly mangled in a tackle, and the comms kind of worried over him for a while. I decided he looks like sort of like a character like the lovable rogue who steals the heart of the Disney princess, and he'd have a nickname like Scooter or Tails or something like that, but we'd all be rooting for him. Anyway, it was 12-10 at halftime, though the soporific comms were unconcerned either way. I have to confess, I was doing 16 other things while trying to watch this game, so I was a bit surprised to look up and see the score that was 26-23, but I was fully hooked at that point. Things kind of fell apart after that for the visitors, though. The home side getting 2 unanswered tries. Really lovely season for Cast was quickly slipping away. And to rub it in, it was former San Diego Legion player Ma'ananu getting the icing on the cake try for Toulon. By the end, it didn't look like it could have been close. 52-23. And by the way, lest we forget, Saturday also gave us the access game where the runner-up in the Pro D2 faces the 13th ranked team in the top 14 with promotion, the shining prize on offer. This year, that meant perennial participants in this fixture, Perpignan, had to go to the Stade des Alpes to face Grenoble, the team that was supposed to have already won and been promoted. My guy, Sam Davis, regular listeners will know I've been a huge fan of his for long years. His boot got his team a 1-point lead as we began the third quarter of play. Long story short, it was fun, but Perpignan only just managed to squeeze the life and fun for all of us right out of the home side. Perpignan again surviving by the skin of their teeth, 11-13, yikes. And Grenoble again being left at the altar, a bitter ending to an unforgiving competition. And as I wrote that, I realized it applied to both competitions, and my love of French rugby is really blossoming. Anyway, back here at home, I never put the slide in. Back here at home, it was playoff time in the MLR as well. It was the final round of the inaugural WER season with 3 great matchups and questions still to be answered. However, as I mentioned, the MAUL Street Journal, our new American rugby podcast, starts this week. And for all that coverage, I strongly urge you to check it out. We're on Twitter at MAUL Street Pod. That's MAULSTPOD. And the podcast should be found in all the places you find any of the rap shows or this one, to be honest. So do us all a favor, check it out, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. And thank you in advance. The music and the early slide that I clicked on too early, you'll know it's time for this week's Diamond in the Ruck Award. This week, the award goes to Finn Russell. Mr. Russell, you have brought your team a coveted premiership title and done it with style. Your constantly lighthearted demeanor belies the power and mastery that lies beneath your wry smirk. I'm going to miss watching you play. I'm sure you're going to feature for Scotland during the summer, but this was just a particularly fun season. And as leading point scorer in a championship match, you have earned this most prestigious of rugby awards. Finn Russell, congratulations to you, for you are this week's Diamond in the Ruck. Well done. Okay, my friends, that brings us, as always, to updates and previews. I mean, what can I say? There's just not a lot on offer. I've kind of previewed the things that are coming our way. What we do have is top-level stuff. For playoff news for the WER and the MLR, again, I suggest you subscribe to the MAUL ST Journal, our new American-centric pod. It'll be the grand final in Super Rugby Pacific. That'll be a great one. The semis and the top 14, that'll be great. And if I've missed anything, please let me know. I've discovered that just today, before I started recording, there are at least 2 cool-looking tournaments happening this weekend that I simply didn't even know about it. So, people say there's no rugby in the summer, and they are wrong. If I've missed anything else, reach out. Let me know. If you have thoughts, feedback, or even a snarky comment, please send them all my way. I honestly love to hear from you, no matter what. Well, my friends, that does it for another week. I'm very excited about the new podcast, which dropped sometime Wednesday morning, I'm pretty sure. I'm told it hasn't appeared on iTunes just yet. That might have changed as I'm talking to you right now. Sometimes that can be slow, though. It's a different process. I'm sure you can find it on Spotify. That's where I get the Treehouse, which I still haven't seen on iTunes, by the way. But, if you are having trouble finding it, just reach out and let me know. If you haven't yet, give us a follow on the Twitters. We're at Maul Street Pod. That's MAULSTPOD. Thanks to everyone for their support, their early support. A lot of you have jumped on board already. We've been hearing good feedback, and it just makes me feel really good. So, to all of you across the globe, cheers. Talk to you soon, and be well.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it does, neat.
You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?
I wish I could get up at 11:30 every morning after being out all night God knows where.